Good morning. It's Monday, April 8th at 11 a.m. I'm Jason Schwartz. This is the Neutral Drone. Welcome to our show.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. So many men sold away. And I was around when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain. Made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands and sealed his face. Pleased to meet you, hope you guess my name. But what puzzling you is the nature of my game.
Wow. Hi, this is Jason Schwartz. I'm here in KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui at 11 a.m., the neutral zone. It's anything but neutral. I have so much fun here. Today is Ariel's birthday. It's my brother's birthday, friend Glenn's birthday. Happy birthday, all. We have a special guest. You know, I don't have people on here unless they're special. And today, we have someone that I am so happy to meet. A man for all seasons. Many of you know him. That's what's so fun about this show. People are on Maui many years. How long have you been here? Many years?
27.
27 years. This is Keith McCrary. Keith, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
I was going to say, what's my line? You know, we're going to just, but as we go, you're going to say, well, this guy is a man for all seasons. He's like Renaissance man. And that's, we only bring Renaissance men and women on this show. And if you know anyone else, bring them on down. Keith, you know, I met Keith in an unusual way for some, but we have a wonderful front desk. I guess she's in charge of everything, Susie, here at Akaku and KAKU Radio. And when I got off one show, someone calling, was a phone ringing? Someone's phone must be ringing. Anyway, I said, I'm looking for interesting guests. And she said, right out of her mouth, Keith McCrary is an interesting guy. So when we first spoke and I spoke to you, I'm going to keep talking here, so I want you to jump in. But what do you say? If I said, what do you do, Keith, what would you say?
I would say I'm an artist and a teacher and a clergyman and a dancer.
A dancer? That's new to my list. What kind of dancing do you do?
Well, it's something of a free-form style. I'm
modern dance would be called?
Modern improvisational dance, basically.
Oh, okay.
It's unique to me, and other people do similar things, but I just get off on any music, classical, modern, rock and roll, whatever.
With partners or not?
Yeah, mostly just by myself.
Oh, okay. Well, this is radio, but we have Facebook Live, so we may do a little performance a little later. But, you know, each of those words is such... No one would know, but Keith is a senior citizen like myself. And what really intrigued me is when I said, so what do you do? And he said, well, I've spent... How many years you were at Waldorf School?
Yes, I've been a Waldorf educator for over 45 years. 45?
How could you only look like 45 now?
Maybe very kind.
So if I look backwards and I count 45, I say 45, I think of our president, so I shouldn't say that word too many. But you just happened to bring it up. Okay. Well, we're not talking about him. 45 years ago, I was envisioning, because of the second thing you told me, which was, you're an artist. You're a caricature. I'm sure you do fine art as well. But you've done caricature art for also as many years, right?
That's true. I actually began that right out of college, and it's been a kind of catch-up thing. When the dental bills pile up, then I get busy drawing funny faces. And my job there is really to draw people so to make them look funnier than they already do.
Well, you know, I think when we stand in front of a caricature artist out in the world, we think that they're going to see our most noble traits and put us on a pedestal and make us look like we have done no wrong. But you're right. It is the funny ones that you look at them and put them in a situation that's unique. You ever have people say, "Oh my goodness, that's not me"?
Absolutely. I had one lady who was just so incensed. Interestingly, after I'd drawn her husband at a nightclub in Austin, Texas, and they were Jewish, and she whispered in my ear, "Oh, please make his nose big and hook it." And I thought, this lady is off the wall already. And then she thought it was very funny what I drew, and it was fairly well done. It was in pastel colors and all, but when I drew her husband thought it was also very funny, but she hated it. I just tucked it in my bag and said no obligation whatsoever.
Have you kept it for posterity?
No, I threw it away. I'm sure.
Well, you know, the wall of shame. You don't keep that kind of thing.
No.
Wow. So you've done a lot of. How many? You can do them quick. I always was amazed that you could capture someone's essence. I guess it takes practice. Was that from art class?
Well, actually, what's necessary is that you have to have an astigmatism and a slightly warped mind, and then I just draw what I see. But in reality, whatever that is, I do them in about 5 minutes, the black and white sketches, and it's an amazing kind of phenomenon where you're really revealing something. Especially because I only do profiles. Seldom do people see their profiles except in, clothing stores with the three mirrors going.
So full profile, one eye kind of stuff.
I just draw the left eye, which itself is interesting, and the left ear if it's showing. And I've drawn actually over 100,000 of them since 1957.
Wow. Now you could probably tell. Were you doing this as a child? 1957, when you got out of college, puts you in
22. Yeah.
So you were born probably at the age of my parents.
1935.
35. Well, my mom was 24, but 35.
Yeah.
It's funny. As I'm getting older, I find I have more and more friends that are older than me. Young people should take note. The older people still have lots of skills. When you see people retiring at 65, they have another 40 years or so.
Well, I don't know about that, young fella.
100,000 characters since 1957.
Right. More than that.
Do you do them for fun also? You do one-eyed presidents and all kinds of stuff?
Oh, yeah, I did it. Actually did one of Bill Clinton. That's the last one I did. But I had him with a missing tooth saying, "What me worry?" Poor
Does Alfred E. Newman still exist in our world now?
Right. It does in my mind.
Mad Magazine, we've gone through some with Spy versus Spy, all the wonderful little characters.
Yeah.
Alfred E. Newman, what me worry? He should run during this year for president.
I think, did he do that once? Maybe.
I think he did, probably. Yeah. And Pat Paulson ran all kinds of good people.
I remember him, too. Good for you.
Well, I ran for mayor of Maui, so I'm a claim to fame myself.
Fantastic.
But
I ran for my wife because she was trying to get away from me.
Oh, you ran for her or from her?
No, both. Depends on the day.
So we're going to see how these overlap. But we're in 1957. We're going back 20 years. 20 years. So since you got out of college, so you were at least 20 when you were in college.
Yeah.
So there's 37 and a couple of more, like you say. But the part that was interesting, I have a friend that I lived with here on Island who was a wonderful man named Reverend James D. Kimmel. Now, he was a reverend through, I think it was Universal Life Church. He was 45 years. 45 years.
Wow.
He just passed away in this last year. That he was a student of the Urantia book.
Oh, yeah. I've dipped into that. I have a copy of it.
And part 4 of the Urantia book is the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. So people that are Christian would find it amazing and wonderful, like an expanded version of the Bible, which I know some people think is blasphemous, but some of it is really very insightful, and I thought really very good. Anyway, he was in San Francisco and Haight-Ashbury, and he was in the scene. He was, I guess they called him the pot preacher.
Oh, wow.
But you were a reverend or a pastor? What were you?
I've been called both. I've been called worse as well. No, I was the pastor of the First Methodist Church in San Francisco from 1966 to 1969.
Wow, that is the summer of love. That's when I graduated high school in 1969. So as I was growing up, and I was on the East Coast, and we were celebrating what was going on the West Coast, and it was an amazing, amazing, wonderful time. When was the Chicago thing? 68, right?
Right.
In Chicago Convention, Democratic Convention in 68. See, the Republicans do it, the Democrats do it. They all fight and bicker and throw and hit. We got to get over this.
That's for sure.
Well, so Kimmel came from there and raised 2 beautiful boys that are now men. And you're from the same area. Did you know him then? Probably not.
Didn't know him. I worked with a group of ministers, a downtown Methodist church and a few other denominations, and the night minister was a good friend of mine, a guy who was, would do a tour beginning at about 10 o'clock at night and go till 6 in the morning.
What was the biggest thing that you remember from that era?
Oh, wait a minute. You asking me to remember that era?
Oh, yeah. Era or error?
Yeah, there you go. Well, actually, it was the freedom of expression. That's what comes to mind. It was a very different time than what we're experiencing now. Not that we are oppressed, at least not so you'd notice it as well as some might. Now, freedom would be the thing I think I would indicate as probably foremost. I mean, I think about brotherhood, I think about equality, and then freedom is more from the cultural realm, at any rate. That's where it belongs. You've got to have freedom of education, freedom of thought, freedom of religion. You've got to have freedom of insight into scientific matters. You've got to have brotherhood and more in the economic realm, it seems to me, which seems very contrary to what we have going, because competition has kind of twisted that and co-opted the governmental realm.
Yes.
Yeah, so there in the governmental realm you need equality, but at any rate, I'm talking in some obscure way about the thought of a man named Rudolf Steiner, who founded the Waldorf School movement 100 years ago.
Wow. So to me it's interesting because I'm just going to tell my little Kimmel story, because
sure.
Reverend Jim Kimmel, many people remember from around here, and many did, and he was a friend and still Willie Nelson years and all kinds of stuff. But he had lived in a farm in Ohio, and he was a swimming champion, came to Hawaii, but first he was in San Francisco, and he lost his inheritance because he was the one in the Time magazine that got married in San Francisco Park naked.
Oh, my.
And so that's when his father disinherited him.
Ouch.
But that was, he was really a wonderful guy. When you say freedom, I just take my hat off to Jim Kimmel. Those were good times. So from those days, he went an unconventional route. You were a Methodist reverend or pastor?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that match up with what was coming out of society? Was it a good match?
It was at the time. The Methodist Church was on the cutting edge of many of the things that have been established in our time. Gay marriage, for example, or the freedom of thought that would actually, in Methodism in particular, as the one unique thing of the bishop, when you get ordained, has to ask one question, and that is, are you going on to perfection? Well, that's a big order, but it doesn't mean that you reach it. You're just striving. Yeah. And that spoke to me. Actually, it coincides and complements what Rudolf Steiner was about, which was the evolution of consciousness.
So did you discover Rudolf Steiner and the Waldorf method while you were pastor there in the church?
Actually, a little before. I was teaching high school students in the late 50s and early 60s. And I was, first of all, started in Texas because I'd gone to university in Austin, and a couple of years there, and then 1 year in a public school in Sacramento, a suburb of Sacramento, and I saw this little sign that said, it was more than a sign, it was a sign. It was something that said the Sacramento Waldorf School, and I had no idea what that was, and I drove down a long driveway to what had been an open house for a housing development. They had two bedroom house, and here you had nobody there. It was long after school, no children except for a receptionist secretary. And when she took me into the first grade room, and that was all it was. Now it's one of the largest Waldorf schools in the country. But I had walked into that first grade room, and there was this immediate, palpable feeling that, my, oh my, this is a place where they care about children like I had never experienced before. And it was that really caught my attention deeply.
Wow.
2 weeks later, I got a letter from a friend I'd gone to high school and college with saying, Keith, I just met a thing called Waldorf education. We don't need to start a private school of our own, which we had considered.
Oh.
And then he had a little announcement with a $30 check in it. Go to this conference down in the Los Angeles area. And I did, and that was the beginning of learning more about what it was. And I had to put that all on the back burner for about 10 years before I could be ready for all of the esoteric aspects and the deeper aspects of Waldorf education.
Well, so when I think of Rudolf Steiner, I've heard his name in, I want to say, spiritual esoteric circles.
That's right.
More than I've heard his name in education with Waldorf. So I actually didn't know that Waldorf was a creation or of Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah, biodynamic agriculture and a good bit more of activities. One thing called the threefold social organism, which I've just come from a conference about that. It was ignored when the Treaty of Versailles was being formulated after World War I. But Steiner was asked, to write something that might just be a preferable social organism that wouldn't result in another war like they had just experienced. And when that didn't happen, he formed the first Waldorf school. One or two industrialists got the picture and said, "Will, you want to start a school? Here's my factory." It happened to be a Waldorf factory. Curiously enough, a Waldorf cigarette factory in Stuttgart, Germany. And in 1919, he established the first Waldorf school there for the children of the workers in that factory.
Wow. How does he tie into the spiritual movement so heavily?
Well, he was profoundly spiritually developed. To put it in a word, he was clairvoyant. And he was able to perceive things that most of us cannot. But he, he had a background in theosophy. That wasn't his. He was the secretary for the general section of the Theosophical Society. He never joined it himself.
Well, that's interesting. That's Manly Hall?
No, it's
Los
more
Angeles?
like that was more Annie Besant and Madame Blavatsky.
Madame Blavatsky.
Yeah, that's
See,
where
all that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, I thought it was a Theosophical Society.
could have been.
Could have been.
I know the name
There's
Manly
a book
Hall.
called The History of the Golden Ages, which goes through extraordinary number of different disciplines. And so when I hear Rudolf Steiner's name, I somehow remember it in the important second. So
for sure.
he wanted to teach a different way that you embraced. So were you a reverend and a teacher at the same time, I'm guessing?
Well, I still have the ordination rites. I still perform weddings and funerals and baptisms, but I haven't had a church situation since 1969, actually. I had a little foray up in the Sierras and Squaw Valley at an experimental church there, but I preferred being in the Bay Area, so I moved back down and drew funny faces at the wharf.
Remember when you said you saw me? You might have seen me at the wharf in '67.
Oh, all right.
I'm sure you admit. No, I'm kidding. But it really was funny because it was just an interesting timing that I was born in 1951, so I was 15, 16, 17. It was my blossoming years, and then I went to college, and things were getting active. Well, where did we go here? What had happened to us? I want to say us. You were our teachers. Where did we go? What has happened to those idealist young adults with visions and are they around?
Well, it's this will sound a little bit out of the mainstream as we're experiencing it, but I think one of the curious things about marijuana is that the being behind the plant, the spiritual being, if one can imagine that, behind the plant, which people who follow Steiner's thought could relate to, that being is wonderful. I mean, it's very wise, very highly developed in himself or herself, and we want to call her Mary Jane, and marijuana in Espanol. See, but here is a being who can delude people, get them off track, just when they're about to accomplish something of karmic importance. That being has the capability of blocking what could.
So you actually
unfold.
think that it was an ingredient in the misdirection, if you will, or
I think it. I'm not speaking medicinally. I think it's great power and significant. And in cases of deep depression, the elation and the euphoria that's possible there. Is something to be acknowledged and appreciated, but I'm talking about the person who is a daily user.
Right, and in anything we talk about, there are always exceptions to your rule. But you're thinking that for the general population, it pacified and gave them joy that didn't have a basis in reality, and reality kind of ran away like, I'd say, like federal government, like county government.
All right.
Like things. We're here in Maui County, marijuana, lots of subjects about marijuana. So many people finding benefit. Like there's a funny line between, some people, like you say, are trying to get a little euphoria because they're sort of uncomfortable with all the things that are going on, and they give their power up to the government and don't realize the freedom and the power is with us that isn't in the government.
That's for sure.
We're the leaders. They should be following what we do. We're the doers. I hear in you. So here you are. All these years ago, our generation went this way. And not all of them. I mean, sometimes I can tell you, when I smoke pot, I have a friend who was 98 years old, and she used to say, 1 puff and I'm brilliant. 2 puffs, I'm an idiot. So, everything was interesting. But a lot of people have looked at marijuana in many ways. So I think it's because the greed factor came up.
Hear, hear.
And I really am very uncomfortable with the fact that there are haves and have-nots. Some say that's socialist, and I say, is there something about being social you have a problem with?
Right.
I mean, when you take a social thing and you give it an ist, you've created this sudden. You're either for it or against it. You're criticizing it. To me, that's what politics is. We all hear the words spoken of what we want things to be, but I don't know always if the people that are getting there have a clue. Some have a clue. But, there's lots of things it takes to make the government work. And one thing I think it needs is us in the private sector loving each other, caring about each other, and genuinely being the difference. We're waiting for something, and it's us waking up to who we are.
Here. And the role of the cultural sphere, if I can go back to that, that triad, is to educate both the political and governmental as well as the economic realm that, capitalism has had its day, and I'm not suggesting socialism in place of it, but I want to get beyond capitalism and recognize that we don't have to compete always, we can cooperate.
Well, we're going to come back to this. I'm here with Keith McCrary. We're going to take a break for our sponsors and people. Keith McCrary, I'm Jason Schwartz. This is KAKU, the Neutral Zone. We're going to go to sponsors and be right back, continue this story, because you speak like me, same language.
All right.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwartz, host of the Neutral Zone. KAKU is a listener-supported station. This means that all of the great programs you hear, like mine, are sponsored by you as well as our underwriters. If you would like to help keep the voice of Maui talking loud and clear, go to kakufm.org/donate today and give. And don't miss the Neutral Zone Mondays at 11 a.m. on 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui.
Hawaii Youth Service Directory is online at 808youth.com. We envision a Hawaii where all youth are connected to the support they need to walk a pono path towards health, happiness, and abundance. 808youth.com is a free, easy-to-use online directory funded by the Office of Youth Services. If you're looking for a family-friendly event, check out our events calendar and connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
iMovie is a free editing application that comes with all Apple products and is easy to learn. Have a slideshow or video content you want to edit into a fun, compelling presentation? Come train how to navigate and use the features of iMovie for desktop using a hands-on approach in this 2-day workshop at Akaku, Friday, April 12th, and Saturday, April 13th. To register, visit akaku.org or call 871-5554.
I'm David Packman, host of The David Packman Show, heard Monday through Friday on KAKU 88.5 FM at our new time, 4 o'clock. Analysis, commentary, interviews, and more from a perspective not offered on corporate media. Not only news from the front lines of progressive issues, but facts that are factual and information that is actually informing. The David Packman Show, heard now at 4 p.m. on KAKU, the voice of Maui.
The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank Maui Arts and Music Association, Dreammakers Foundation of Maui, for their support. Since 1991, with hundreds of television shows and their MauiArtsandMusic.com website, they have championed self-sustainability on Maui. The Neutral Zone is heard live Mondays at 11 a.m. and replayed Saturday at 7 a.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. We are back. I'm Jason Schwartz here with Keith McCrary, Renaissance man and educator. We were talking before the break about cooperation being, senior to, and you were saying, I don't want to cut you off.
Cooperation is an essential modality that needs to be recovered and lived into in contrast to competition. When I think about something as simple as playing ping pong, which I enjoy doing, and I found that every time I win, I feel a little puffed up, and every time I lose, I feel a little down. And so I've changed the rules at my house, where I have a table, and I play 5, 10, 15 minutes with a good opponent, someone comparable or not, and we just enjoy playing. I get a good shot off, she or he gets a good shot off, that's fine. That's what it's about. It's not about keeping score. No score.
That is an absolute, I was mentioning during the break to Keith, the charter for my nonprofit, the Maui Arts and Music, is that together, working in cooperation, extraordinary, great benefit. Competition is fun, but if we take it all personally and we really, there is no winner and loser in a game where we all, well, some people get a charge out of it, but I think our whole world needs to better understand cooperation.
You're here. Yeah.
Now, you've lived through a couple of wars,
Yep.
right? A few of them.
Yeah, I was 10 when the WW2 was complete, and fortunately I was 18 when the Korean conflict was over, so I didn't have to actually enlist or dodge the bullet, as it were.
And I had Vietnam was my thing. I went to college and they had the draft by number times, and I declared myself eligible in September, and they didn't use me by the end of the year. So I didn't get free school, but I have all my limbs, and I respect all the people that went and served our country and served our world, trying to make it a peaceful world through a very ugly thing called war.
Yeah, curious paradox.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Now, you were telling me you are still teaching. What do you like teaching? What's your...
Well, what I'm doing now is just part-time. I taught at the high school level because the Waldorf School has a high school in Makawao at the Hui Noiao. But I've, for many, many years, I've taught ancient Greek and Latin. Not very commonly done in our time, but in the original Waldorf schools, that was expected. Including the classical Greek as well as the Koine Greek, which is the New Testament Greek. I took 2.5 years of Greek in college because I was thinking of going into the ministry, and I wanted to be prepared in that realm.
Right.
But now it's a matter of doing it to expand children's vocabulary. And if you expand the vocabulary, what goes along with that is an expansion of consciousness. If you have more words to express yourself and describe something, you are more able to grasp it. You're more able to experience it. So I teach ancient Greek with a little humor. In fact, I should have warned you before, I have a muse whose name is Hugh. And his parents, he has a life of his own, his parents thought it would be funny if they named him Hugh because their last name was Moore. And so you get Hugh Moore, and that's one of my muses. I have 2 others I won't go into.
Yeah, what's your middle initial? R?
Hugh R.
You are?
You are Moore.
Oh, it's Hume?
Hugh, and no, it's H-U-G-H.
Yeah, Hugh.
Yeah, Hugh Moore.
So, and I thought you are more. But,
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Same club.
On occasion, I am more than I.
Is that your caricature signature?
Well, no, but it is actually the author and the main character of a story I'm creating called Gullible's Troubles. And I won't go into humor anymore because I want to come back to the Greek. And I teach that with humor. And one way to do that, after the children have learned, and we're talking 10, 11-year-olds, after they've learned to say alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and so forth, rhythmically as well as, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, that kind of thing. They get it down cold. Then I share with them how and where I learned it. It was at the University of Texas. And so my classmates didn't say it the way that I say it normally. So I get them to put their thumbs in their belts and bow the legs a little bit and speak with a real good Texas accent and say alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, and so forth. And then I do it with a French accent and an English accent and an Italian accent. They like all of that. It keeps
10 and
them
11-year-olds.
Yeah, right.
It's very funny because I learned Latin starting in junior high school.
Good
Had
for you.
3 years of Latin.
Excellent.
And Greek I didn't do it. Very different, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Different.
Well, you've got a different alphabet altogether. It looks different, quite.
Do they come with cultures when you're teaching them? Or?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. In fact, the 5th grade curriculum is about ancient civilizations, and it goes from Persia, actually India to Persia to Egypt, and then to Greece. And then in 6th grade, we pick up the Roman civilization. That's when we teach Latin.
I see.
Yeah, but I'm delighted that you had 3 years of Latin.
I learned more English in Latin than anything.
Here.
I heard the word pluperfect, and
Yeah, really.
others looked at me when I say those things.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And pluperiphrastic. That's what
that one I don't even know that one.
Well,
We
it's
don't
not
need to know
important.
that.
Right. But the keeping it light and humorous, and each one of the Greek letters I actually draw a picture of, and I will include it in a picture, like the word alpha, the letter alpha. It looks like this in the lowercase, and I'd make that a head of an angel, an angelos, which is the Greek word for messenger. And the angelos shows up in words like Los Angeles and evangelist, and evangel itself, the name, the girl's name quite often, or Evangeline. And then I will go to another word and talk about all the different meanings, like akros, meaning above, and polis, meaning city. And the Acropolis is the place above the city of Athens where there was a great Parthenon, a beautiful building that had Athena, a sculpture of her inside.
The kids must have loved having you as a teacher, and still do.
Well, thank you. It works for me, and I think it works for the children and the parents. The parents get involved too.
I'm very happy to hear that kind of education is going on now. I've heard from, I want to call them public educators, let's say people in the public school system, that they don't feel that their children are coming away with tools. Do you at Waldorf have a curriculum that is directly applicable in the world, or just gives them a philosophy of how to?
No, it's amazing wisdom in the curriculum. It's age appropriate always, so that you begin with fairy tales in the 1st grade, as well as prior to the 1st grade, and then it'll shift in the 2nd grade to, well, let me back up and to say you start with a straight and a curved line, and that's the beginnings of writing, as well as form drawing. And every letter that you ever will write and every number that you ever will write is either a straight line or a curved line or a combination of the two. And I've created a story around that with the littlest princess learning of that from Mr. Pedagogue, who is happy to share his knowledge and to make observations that the battlements of her castle have straight lines and the rolling hills beyond that have the curved, and it just goes on from there.
Well, these kids must have, I'm just thinking of myself, but as kids, when they come out of Waldorf school, sounds like they come with a well-rounded education, I guess the word is.
For sure. Yeah, the arts, the sciences, we teach everything through art in the first 7 years, or, from, not 7 years, a 7-year cycle. is from 7 to 14.
Do you ever have discussions with public schools about their curriculum and things like that? Because sounds like your success is you're a private school, so the only way people come is if parents think it's worth it to pay to get education for their kids.
Right,
and
right.
I'm doing it. So, does the public do they seek you?
Actually,
I hope so.
they're in one place on the mainland that I know of. There's probably other places. There are courses in the summertime for public school teachers to learn about what we do in terms of methodology and curriculum.
I see.
Yeah, so it needs to be more expanded, and it brings me actually to another topic, if I may.
Of course.
So I'm quite interested in Akaku, in terms
Akaku is our TV component here.
Yes, as a possible way of bringing something of what I've experienced for 45 plus years, and a podcast, video as well as audio, to make it more available, because I've got a story. You'll be interested in this, if
Yes.
not amazed.
Both.
I have a story that can the same characters can grow from first grade all the way through 8th grade. Some join along the way, but the Littlest Princess meets Bubba and the Balloon Man, and Bubba and the Balloon Man learn about the alphabet. And
So these are all characters that walk these kids through their education. So
That's right.
that's great, and they all get one introduced to the other, so there's continuity.
exactly.
That's great.
You're right. Maxie and Minnie Measurement come in the 3rd grade, and Maxie is kind of chunky and big, and he likes to measure big things. And his sister is a twin sister. Minnie measures the little ones, and they move in next door to Bubba, and they become friends and go to the same school.
Is this a published book of yours, or not yet?
It is. It's been printed. It's in print, but it hasn't. I've sent it out to some friends of mine for cooperative
Proof.
Yeah, and proofreading as well as collaborating, because they may, some of them already have said, "Oh, you really need a little bit of this and a little bit of that," and I've had some big help.
And we're in a new world with a delivery system that can get all around the globe. So
Yep.
may that be a great success for you and for all of us.
Thank you. I hope so.
Now,
Yes.
I don't know what's on this board, but there's a board you carried in here.
Yeah,
For radio, if you're not watching, you don't know what board? What? But we're on Facebook Live, and you'll find us on MauiNeutralZone.com. Afterwards, you can see this again. And we're going to also be on Akaku. We want everyone to know about it all. Here comes the board.
All right.
This is the first side.
Okay.
Seems to be, at the moment, empty. Will it help if I hold it, or you need some help?
Actually, I'd like for you to draw a wiggly line,
Okay.
and I will try to make something out of it. And you can use a lot of it there, and I will
You want one line, or?
just, it can be any, but yeah, one line. basically.
Okay.
All right.
Guys ready?
Okay. Now, having never seen this line before, I'm going to step over here and see if I can make it out. Can you make it out on the...
I'm not sure if it's going to... Let me see here. Okay. If you move your hand, we have shadow. So when I move yourself back for a second, I think they may be able to see it. If you're watching TV, you're going to see...
Try another one and...
Another one. And then I'm going to take a quick snapshot for later.
Okay. I'll just use this as an example.
Okay.
This is something that I found is helpful to expand the consciousness of students and of myself on occasion. I will simply take this and make this into a, well, maybe, yeah, I think
I am
know.
a divine.
You've already drawn the nostril for me, essentially. And now I'll just take
God.
this over here and just very simply draw, an eye here. We probably ought to give him an ear just to make him look a little more human.
I see.
Yeah, and we'll give him, a tooth or two in the middle here. So what I've found is that if I've got 5 minutes extra in a period and nothing to do, I'll bring up one of the students to draw a wiggly line on the chalkboard primarily, but on a whiteboard it works as well. Let's give him a little more hair and maybe a little mustache.
Step out of it so you're shadowed for a second.
Okay.
I see.
There you are.
Great.
So there's an easy way to just shift this around. And what's our time frame?
We have 11 minutes. We're good.
Okay. So just to give you a little picture of something that I would sometimes draw for the students or for myself. I always put my daughter's name and somebody else's name.
You might want to move your hand down so they can see it each time. There's our camera.
Okay.
See. Okay.
Okay. And okay, we've got
I see a caricature artist here.
There it is.
My goodness. I think I had her for second grade, this woman.
Well, wait a minute. You're jumping the gun a little, maybe. On the other hand, maybe you're a gender bender. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. Any rate, it's supposed to be something of a caricature of yours truly.
I was going to say self-portrait.
Yeah, that's sort of what it is. And
I like the one eye thing. I mean, it's very clear. It's a signature of yours.
Yeah, indeed. I would, and the critic in me says, well, I could have done this better, but done that better, and I flattered myself a little bit, probably. And
There you go.
I could put the beret on there too. Just you probably have heard this before, but God in His wisdom gave a few people perfect heads, and the rest He gave hair. Right?
I did never heard that.
Well,
So that's why bald people are proud of their heads.
yeah, right. So I would just go.
You're not in screen, so once you sit down, we'll let you do it.
Okay.
You might want to sit. In fact, I think that's really. I'm going to have you sit, and
Yes.
just for the fun of it, because while we're here,
Yes.
just want. Can people see that? I hope they can see it while you're on. Oh,
No, that's not too.
let's see.
Well, never mind. Maybe a little. Otherwise, it's going to look like hair.
Well,
Oh, well.
do you have other artists spring forth out of your classroom? I bet you inspire a lot of kids.
Actually, I had a boy watch me draw caricatures once at a school fair for about 6 hours. He now is in his 20th year of working with Pixar.
Wow.
I mean, he's so far beyond me. It's just amazing, right?
That's a wonderful story.
I wanted to give you my card. Okay. I don't know if that's screenable or not.
It says my card.
Yes, really. And on the other side is a fairly decent caricature of yours truly.
Oh yeah. Well, we're gonna get this on TV. You'll see it for sure.
All right.
Director of Advanced World Education. Oh.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That is a way of talking about teaching adults primarily.
And this is for you. That's just.
Yay. All right.
This logo. This is a simple logo.
Nice.
It's not me. What it is just a circle. When I wanted an animation for this show, I was thinking about a zone, an area that's soft and pudgy, and people can come in and talk. But then there's always a lightning bolt, someone coming in to try to kind of disrupt things. So
good.
that's what we are all about.
All right.
But my card, I think that's very good. You guys will see this afterwards. And you on radio, you're missing the fact that Keith he has a unique look, I would say. If I were going to describe him, for you that can't see, I'll just describe him to you. Those of you that know George Clooney, he doesn't look like George Clooney.
I was going to say that. That was good.
No, you really look like an artist, and you look like a pastor who is now resigned and gone global. When I hear you speaking, I hear a man of great wisdom, way expanded over conventional religiosity. How did that happen over the years? Just keep learning, keep growing?
That too, and a lot of help from upstairs, as they sometimes say.
How did Maui get into your movie?
My connection with Maui came through Virginia Fish, who is a figure in this society. And she did her practice teaching with me in Sacramento, at the Sacramento Waldorf School, and another man named Gary McDaniel, who has since retired. He also did his practice teaching, and then they moved here and said, "Come, Keith, give us a series of lectures about Steiner and Waldorf education." And my wife and I came. It was love at first sight.
Turn it around. Once you get to Maui, it's like, why do I want to go back to that mainland?
All right. It took us about 9 years to get our ducks in a row, and then we sent our high school graduate off to Ecuador, where he learned Spanish very well, and we came to Maui.
Wow.
Yep.
So, and when I think about all this, I think about how our world is a better place when we have someone like yourself. You're a mixture, I mean, it's nice to hear that you're still doing it and still there with kids. I like to think that a lot of people that are seniors could stand to get back into the education system, whether it's helping teachers in schools or bringing their gifts to schools. I tell people sometimes, if you're a senior, why don't you think about financial aid and go to college part-time, get to know how to use these computers and these newfangled things these kids are doing. Kids, they're 20, they're not kids anymore.
Right.
But the whole world is so different. And also I find that my presence there, I'm braver than they are. I like to ask questions, and I bring out things that are a little outside the lines. And I find that a lot of our kids, they're smart enough to know them, and they just need a little bit of help on choosing. There's so many things to look at now.
That's for sure. Right.
How does the world work in Waldorf when the world is expanding? Is it like a core education and then expanded?
Well, I think you touched on it a little earlier yourself. I mean, what the key is really here in the heart, and then it goes from here into the brain, and then it comes out here in the hands. So it's head, heart, and hands was one way of describing Waldorf education. It is something that, when I first came across Steiner's work, if there hadn't been the practical application of it coming into an education movement, I would have shrugged and walked away. But it's been an amazing and wonderful journey, and I'm happy to be talking about it at this point, and look forward to creating a podcast possibly that will continue the process.
Podcast, does that have visual? You're thinking also, right?
Yes, I am. I'd like to have both. I'd like to have the auditory for young children, because I don't want them staring at a screen,
Sure.
For all that time. They need to use their imaginations, and if they're hearing stories, they're creating mental pictures, which is another way of talking about imagining things. So the auditory is definitely preferable for the younger, but by high school and adults, the visual can assist, and it can be helpful.
So what you're saying about auditory, I imagine in this very visual world of all these computers and stuff, so sometimes put the computers down and use your senses more, huh?
Right, right.
Well, you were talking about agriculture.
Yeah, biodynamics, yes.
Well, give us a little bit more hint. And I mean, I'm trying to understand for our audience things that will kind of get them interested to go looking.
Right. There are 3 or 4 biodynamic farms here on island, and the one that comes to mind is in Kula, and they have an apiary, fantastic collection of bees, and sell honey on a regular basis. They do that at the farmer's market in Makawao. In Pukalani. And the biodynamics is something that Steiner came up with right at the end of his life, and he was concerned about the soil, especially, and that's what biodynamics works on primarily, is creating fresh and enlivened soil so that vegetables that grow there can be healthy to eat.
I can hardly imagine. We are actually almost out of time, Keith. You're going to have to come back. I hope you sure will.
Well, I'd be happy to.
Keith McCrary, man for all seasons. Thank you for joining us. It has been a pleasure. I hope you guys have enjoyed this show. We're going to have Keith back. This just ran away, Keith.
All right.
Really been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us here at the Neutral Zone.
Indeed.
I appreciate you very much.
Well, it's mutual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha, and thank you guys for joining us. We will see you next week here at the Neutral Zone, 11 o'clock on Mondays. Aloha. The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank Maui Arts and Music Association, Tree Makers Foundation,